off. I want to thank you because the Astros are playing this evening and you're still here.
7-1.
It's 7-1, Astros. So that may be a good omen for everybody to be here. So that as they play, you need to go to it. It's 9-1 now. Fantastic. And as they were introducing the city council members, Murray Robb now is here also. Also, I want to thank the park board and the port for being here. And as anyone may know, this year the port is 198 years old, and we'll be celebrating 200 years in a couple of years. And so, park board and port, glad to have you with us this afternoon. Thank you.
Don't look a day over 175.
Here at the city, we have come a long way since we visited last, and I'm happy to report that the city is resilient and on a path of progress that has not been seen in the history of the city. This past year has been one of change. The old adage of don't change anything unless you are prepared to manage the potential disruption could be the theme for this last year. So this evening, I would like to highlight the current state of the city and the specific challenges that we face coming up this coming year. Financially, the city is very stable and reserves funded fully. A reduction in the property tax rate has occurred again for this coming year, which is one of the lowest in the area, and all the while maintaining the quality of services for the Galveston residents. We have continued to utilize sales tax for the betterment of our residents, especially through our Industrial Development Corporation. And thank you to the citizens here in Galveston who overwhelmingly approved its extension at this last election. Thank you very much. This last year, Council continued to explore new streams of revenue from visitor sources such as additional passenger tariffs for new and future cruise terminal contracts also. And Council also approved a $1 a day per car for cruise-oriented parking for the port and private parking lots. These two additions that I just mentioned will shortly bring in a minimum of $3 million per year of unrestricted revenue for the benefit of our residents, and this amount should increase every year. Collective bargaining discussions have recently been completed with the police and nearing completion with our firefighters. These new agreements will position our public safety personnel to be some of the highest paid in the entire area. And our pension plans have continued to stay within approved guidelines. From an economic development standpoint, Reiner's Hospital has begun their expansion, and new projects on the east and west end, as well as at the port, have moved forward. To assist with our growth, the city's permitting process has become more virtual and streamlined. Our Ombudsman program, under the direction of Michelle Hay, has assisted more small and large businesses than ever before. Throughout all of this growth, the quality of life for our residents has remained Council's #1 goal and serves as a guide for all of our decisions. From an infrastructure standpoint, numerous street improvement programs are continuing, and TxDOT is poised to begin construction on the flyover for exiting traffic at 61st Street here shortly. Preliminary discussions concerning a flyover for the entering traffic to Harborside have also begun with TxDOT. and if this occurs, will assist traffic flow to the port's internal road that will allow cruise traffic to enter port property at 33rd Street. In town, council has begun discussions concerning Broadway enhancements and has referred the topic to the Planning Commission for public input and recommendations. From the hard rains last week, you will be happy to know that we are finalizing a master storm drainage plan, which is setting the stage for the possibility of additional pump stations with our ultimate goal of enough stations throughout the island to mitigate excessive flooding for residences and for businesses. The pump station for the eastern section of the island is in the engineering phase right now. And the city has received a grant of $54 million from the GLO that goes towards the second pump station. Our smart water meter conversions are 35% complete, with the city contractor installing 250 to 300 meters per week. And as you may remember, this is being funded by federal funds. And more good news, we have been working diligently with CenterPoint for backup power with mobile generators in case of power outages due to a storm. And if emergency arises that calls for shedding of electricity, a planned sequential management of power allotments instead of long-term blackouts has been developed. In public transportation, we are looking at a new paradigm with rubber-tired trolleys being considered when replacing our existing buses. At the airport, we have finalized a master plan that includes the possibility of commercial airline service associated with cruise passengers. When it comes to quality of life, the city has not forgotten our parks, with plans developed for Jones Park, and an environmental analysis is underway for Shield Park prior to establishing our construction plans. And with our sales tax increasing, the IDC is committed to additional funding for all of our parks, including the recent approval of a new Sandhill Crane soccer complex with construction to begin this coming year. The city's emphasis on public art has increased, and that is due to a recent funding of the Cultural Arts Commission with more hotel occupancy tax for public art. A topic that may seem simple on the surface, but is actually complex, is providing single-family, affordable workforce housing for our teachers, medical personnel, first responders, and many tourism workers. Currently, the city is working with Build Galveston, a community development nonprofit or corporation, to explore options available to us, including the development of a Galveston Essential Workforce Housing Fund, supported with philanthropic investment to incentivize the development of affordable housing. An announcement is forthcoming soon, probably coming up in the next few weeks, outlining the details of this in this program for incentivizing affordable housing. A new program this last year that has been extremely successful is the addition of our mental health officers program. And I want to thank Chief Valley and the Galveston Police Department for bringing this program. The majority of our 9/11 calls, not only here in Galveston, but throughout the United States, the majority of 9/11 calls are usually centered around mental health or social service issues. And by establishing this mental health officers program, we have freed up police officers to respond to more criminally oriented calls. Statistics just received from our police chief this week shows our violent and property crime rates the lowest that it's been in the last 4 years. And a change in our community policing program will be underway soon to reduce the size of the areas our police force is to manage, causing a more up-close personal relationship with GPD. The city realizes that homelessness is increasing on our island. And it is a topic that many residents have discussed with me and many nonprofits have been discussing. At Council's upcoming October 26th workshop, results of a survey conducted by Galveston nonprofits in conjunction with the city will be discussed, along with current and proposed programs designed to assist the community and those that are homeless with supportive care. We have issues here on the island with the county jail here. We have issues here with UTMB here. We have issues here with the Salvation Army here, who are doing wonderful things, but that attracts the homeless to the island. And we are working with the Gulf Coast Center to work out a program once we evaluate the survey that will come to us shortly to provide transportation for those homeless individuals that are brought down here and don't have a way to get back to where they came from. We are also looking at longer-term solutions. And recently, this last Monday, Tim Tegens, our Director of Developmental Planning here at the city, went through and had a tour there with the Houston, in the Houston area on what they are doing for homeless concerns there. Houston, as you may or may not know, is leading the nation in innovative approaches to the management of the homeless issue. And Mr. Teachins is bringing back to us, and will be visiting with us on October 26th, also some thoughts that he got from that meeting also. That particular meeting, though, I wanted to do a thank you to the Mitchell Foundation. That meeting, that educational meeting in Houston, was sponsored by the Mitchell Foundation, and we greatly appreciated the city, what they're doing to try to look at and solve this issue.
And the permanent endowment fund.
And the permanent endowment.
And the permanent endowment fund. Who was that from?
Marina.
Oh, Marina, there you are. Thank you, Marina. And the permanent endowment fund. Just a few comments about the Port of Galveston. The port, just as the city, is looking at alternate forms of revenue. And they're looking at, and you've seen in the papers recently, their involvement with many grants that are being received by the Port of Galveston. They're also looking at expanding businesses there at the harbor and looking at Pelican Island, and we'll talk about Pelican Island in just a second here. Diversification is still the foundation for decisions at the port. And in sync with the current master plan that the port has, which, by the way, will be undergoing an update soon, emphasis on cargo-related activities is just as important to the port as cruise business. Recently, the port received a maritime infrastructure grant from the state, and the majority of that $36 million grant, coupled with $14 million from the port's reserves are focused on improvements on the west end for cargo-related activities. The state grant also allows for continued construction for an internal road on port property that will lessen cruise traffic that is related to the cruises, and another $3.85 million grant will fund the remodeling of the walkway over Harborside at 25th Street for passage of cruise passengers to downtown. For those that are following us, this opening of that walkway and the remodeling of it has been a topic since I've been on council since 2014, and it's finally going to be a reality with funding that will take place here shortly at the port. Recently, City Council also approved the sale of port-related bonds for Cruise Terminal 25 improvements, which will allow for the arrival of one of the newest carnival ships, the Jubilee, that will be December 23rd here at our port. And as has been reported in the paper, with the leaving of Del Monte at Pier 16, MSC and Norwegian has approached the port on the possibility of a fourth cruise terminal, which is in the port's master plan. And discussion is ongoing about if and when we need to proceed with this fourth cruise terminal. I had a meeting with some of the port officials and the MSC officials last week, and MSC is brought to our understanding, and sometimes we take things for granted here in Galveston and don't realize the importance of some of the things that we're doing here. But MSC, unrelated to any input from Galveston, did a study. And they said to me that they are looking at all over the world what are going to be the most dynamic ports in the future. And they said Galveston will be one of the 4 most dynamic ports in the entire world coming up here in the future. A joint meeting of the Wharves Board and City Council is tentatively scheduled for the beginning of November, where council will give input into the updating of the master plan and the development of Pier 16. And any discussion of the port would not be complete without mentioning the status of the topic that has probably been going on longer than any of these, and that's the building of the Pelican Island Bridge. The city has been in negotiation with TxDOT for over a year now. And on a contract, we're discussing with them to bring this bridge to a reality. City Council has been discussing this. There are still components of this contract that do not meet our approval with TxDOT, and we are working with them to bring this to fruition shortly. And hopefully, we are discussing with TxDOT, and I'm almost reluctant to give deadlines here, but TxDOT is looking to hopefully make changes to this contract that are acceptable to us by the end of this calendar year. So we're looking at moving forward with this as quickly as we possibly can. And one last thing concerning Pelican Island, and Brian can mention a little more of this when we get to this subject.
Better write this down.
Make a note of that, Brian. And is that the city is currently in negotiations with Pelican Island, or negotiations, I should say, with the Port of Houston on acquiring land at Pelican Island. And that's something that council will be working with. And by doing that, Pelican Island is an economic engine that is untapped out there, and we have to move forward with that. And Brian and staff have had many meetings with the Port of Houston to see what we can do, and I think you'll be bringing shortly to us, Brian, some thoughts on the acquisition and funding of land there on Pelican Island. Before I leave the port, I want to congratulate the new chairman of the board's board, Vic Pearson, the vice chairman, Jeff Patterson, and the entire board's board have been working real hard to work with the city here. And I'd like to thank the board's board in behalf of City Council for their cooperation with the city in establishing a program for a series of audits that are designed to make their operation even more efficient. And speaking of economic engines, tourism, needless to say, and probably all of you have noticed this, has established new records in every aspect of their operation. When I was in 2014, came on city council, the amount that was attributed to 1% of the 15% that is charged for hotel occupancy tax fees for short-term rentals and hotels, that 1% equated to around $500,000. Currently, in our upcoming budget, not only for the park board, but for the city, that particular 1% of hotel occupancy tax is equated to $3.3 million. It shows you the amount of hot tax and how it's increasing on this island. Congratulations, too, I think are in order, to our new chairman of the park board, Jason Hardcastle, and to the new vice chairman, Kimberly Guido, and to the entire Wars Board. And we're looking forward to a very good relationship coming up this coming year with the park board. I would say that the city and the park board are in one mind when I make this following statement. The days of measuring success by the number of tourists that we can get on this island are over. The promotion of a higher value tourist who shops and dines on the island and respects our island and what it has to offer is the future for tourism on this island. The park board understands this, and they are looking at diversifying their visitors and aggressively pursuing a guest that is here to enjoy our culture, our sports opportunities, our environmental pursuits, and recently in a meeting with UTMB, developing the concept of medical tourism, which is an untapped tourism component that is perfect match for the city of Galveston here. The Stewart Beach Park Pavilion, if you get a chance, drive by and look at it, because it's not going to be there much longer. It's going away here very quickly. And the city and Brian has been working with the park board and Kimberly DeNacy, their interim CEO there at the park board, on a new design and funding for our most iconic park, which is Stewart Beach Park. City staff will be presenting at our October 26th meeting the new initial elements of this new look for Stewart Beach Park. And I think council and the community is looking forward to that. When you speak of cultural tourism, there is no better example than the celebration of Juneteenth here in Galveston. What was just a celebration for Galvestonians not too long ago is now a national event. And I wanted to announce that plans are being made for the movement towards a National Juneteenth Museum, which will be coming to council soon. In our mind, the only place for a National Juneteenth Museum is the birthplace of Juneteenth, and that's here in Galveston.
Yeah.
Short-term rentals are now accounting for more than 50% of hotel occupancy tax collected. And the city and park board recognizes the need to allow this industry and to make sure this industry operates in a manner that coincides with our community standards. The Park Board has new software that is recording objective data concerning short-term rentals, and a 24-hour call service has been established to manage complaints. Council realizes that the need to make sure that our existing regulations are enforced is very important. And recently, we had a council member that is wanting to bring forward structuring educational components of the short-term rental industry so that they can be proactive in educating not only the short-term rental owners, but those that visit short-term rental owners, short-term rentals, to make sure that we are proactive in warding off any potential concerns. And finally, a discussion of tourism is something that I get the most questions about in many of the meetings that I go to when I talk about tourism is what's going to happen to the USS Texas. The USS Texas, as you know now, is at Gulf Copper being refurbished. It will be there still for a little while, going through their refurbishment process. And coming up here shortly, possibly at the next meeting of the Wharves Board, the USS Texas Foundation will be coming to the Wharves Board to discuss the placement of the USS Texas at Pier 19 and 20. There are still a lot of logistics that have to be worked out concerning this, so a decision has not been made, but I suspect that you will be hearing an announcement on some of the thoughts coming from the Wharves Board here shortly, coming up this coming month. As you know, Landry's Corporation has assumed the Mitchell lease for the land lease there at Pier 19 and 20. And we felt that it was appropriate that the USS Texas visit with them to make sure that it was fine if the Wharves Board decides to have them at the dock there at 19 and 20, that Landry's was acceptable with that. And they have visited with Landry's, and Landry's is more than accepting of having them there. So we should be talking about making decisions on the USS Texas very quickly.
How many pages you got there?
Almost. And talking about some of the challenges. We have a lot of success here, and sometimes when you talk about a business, people say that the hardest thing in a business is not necessarily building the business, it's managing success. And that's where we are today here in Galveston, in my opinion. We have challenges. One, the foremost challenge is the need to maintain our focus on more efficiency in government and in the management of our finances, especially in light of our storm and our tax cap that we have from the state. This goes part and parcel in developing more alternate revenue sources driven by our visitors. Secondly, we need to look at not only a localized based solution model to solve some of our concerns here, but we have to look at having state and federal involvement also. An example of this is already taking place here at the city. Senator Mays Middleton has been working with us on the Pelican Island Bridge project, and plans are being made for the assistance of Representative Terry Leo Wilson as we look at expanding our use of hot tax for island-wide management. When hot tax is discussed, it centers around specific tourist activities. And this is a personal feeling, and I'm going to be carrying this forward to council. But it centers around, when you talk about hotel occupancy tax, around, as I mentioned, specific projects that are tourist oriented. And as an example of that is the Sandhill Crane Soccer Complex. $2.4 million towards that construction was contributed by hotel occupancy tax. But if you really look at it, personally, I feel that Galveston in general is a tourist area. And funding should be considered for allied services that support tourism's impact throughout the island. And I think you're going to be looking at the expanded use and us pursuing that with our representatives and senators here to look at the expanded use of hotel tax for the entire island. We need to also maintain our focus on infrastructure and flood control and not take our foot off the gas. This includes emergency management protocols. This year, we were very fortunate with the storms as it relates to the hurricanes, and we can't let our guard down. And maintaining, as I've mentioned throughout this entire presentation tonight, we need to maintain our balance between quality of life for our residents while supporting a vital part of our economy, which is tourism. And finally, with all the activity that is going on in the city, it's sometimes easy to forget that the process is as important as the outcome. Meaning all of these decisions that we've talked about need to be made in a professional, inclusive, and transparent manner. I want to thank you this evening for staying with me through this presentation. As you can tell, I'm bullish on Galveston, and I really love being here. I have been honored to be your mayor and serving as your mayor here in Galveston, and I can tell you that a lot of the things, if not everything we're talking about, it comes from working with a city council that is dedicated to making this community better. And also, we have one of the best city staffs, if not the best city staffs in the entire state of Texas. And I want to thank our staff and council throughout this entire last year for bringing forward so many projects and keeping the best interests of our residents in mind as we move forward. Thank you.
This one work? Does this one work? Can y'all hear me? Yeah. I'm gonna stand up because I've been sitting too long already. Plus the fact I don't have a teleprompter like the mayor does. Good job texting all that to him, Angela, but getting it on there. We all know the brains of the operation. Thank y'all for having me tonight. There's not a whole lot I can say that the mayor hasn't already said, except for the fact that I do want to thank the city staff for being here tonight. Most of them would probably like to be watching the show, but they're here to answer your questions tonight, and they are one of the best that there is. You know, the mayor went into pretty good detail with everything. Let me just give you a little bit of background about me, and that'll kind of give you an idea where we're coming from with things. I'm a fifth generation BOI, born and raised here. I've got 2 kids. Grown now. My youngest just turned 20 this week. He's a junior at Texas A&M. And my oldest daughter is also a graduate of the Bush School at A&M, and she works for Ernst & Young and lives in the Heights in Houston. So my youngest daughter would kill to be here tonight. She loves this stuff. But she's on her way back from fall break. Aside from my family, which is the single most important thing in the world to me, Galveston ranks right up there. My dad's family came here and worked at the brewery, all generations until they were gone. My mother's family came over here. Most of them worked in the maritime business. My grandfather was the captain of the Cone Johnson Ferry up until its retirement. So I spent many a summer riding in the wheelhouse of that ferry. So been here forever. Don't plan on going anywhere. This is it for me. Somebody asked me if you'd ever be city manager anywhere else, and I said, no. But Galveston's my town, and everything we do here, we do because we love the city. And, you know, unlike a lot of other cities where you get people that come in and out and they make decisions that are good on the short term, I plan on living here. for the rest of my life. My wife owns a business here. I plan on my kids coming back here, at least one of them, and trying to make their lives here in Galveston. So every decision we make, at least that I make, I look at it from that perspective. And plus the fact is that when you have just about all your family living here on the island, you don't make too many expensive decisions with taxes and things like that, because I'll hear it from them more than I hear it from you. I can assure you of that. Just to touch on a few things that came up. First of all, many of you probably read Facebook and the blogs and all that stuff. So if any of you ever read those comments that says Brian Maxwell doesn't know anything about running government, my government professor was Bujo Waddell. So you have a great opportunity to go out him for all of that. The mayor touched on the stormwater master plan, and it is very important. We haven't done one of these in over a decade. And as we all know, a lot has changed in over a decade. Our earth is not the same as it used to be. And we can sit here and debate what's causing it, but we are definitely seeing a change in how our island is affected by storms, by tide, and things like that. So how we go about draining the island and protecting it going into the future is going to be a challenge. And it's not going to be a cheap one. Just as of a meeting today with the Stormwater Master Plan consultants, we are probably approaching $500 million in flood control projects over the next decade to decade and a half, just to achieve what they're recommending in this study. Galveston's flat, we're an island. What goes out is going to come back in. So when we enlarge drainage, it's just as much to let the water back in as it is to let it go back out. So we've got some challenges ahead of us. And as with anything that touches the water, the people at the port can tell you this, it gets exponentially more expensive. And so we're going to be working for you on that, but look forward to hearing more about that in the future as we go. The mayor gave some well-deserved kudos to our police department for their work with our mental health program. That has been a huge success. And what is more impressive is it is a partnership with our fire department. And you don't often see a policeman and a fireman sitting together over there, except for the buffet. And fire chief are here tonight, but they worked long and hard on that program. And I will tell you, I only hope it gets as good as the one that I experienced when I worked for Galveston County. Mr. Castro, Jaime Castro is here. He started that program at Galveston County and ran it, did a fantastic job. And we're trying to keep up with that here at the city. It has been one of our busiest units, as you might expect. And it dovetails into a lot of the concerns that you're seeing here in Galveston now, especially with homeless. For a very short stint in my career, this is my 32nd year working in local government here in Galveston County. I did a short stint where I shared a cube wall for a little while with Ms. Tiernan at UTMB, dealing with the county indigent healthcare program. So I have a little bit of background dealing with indigency in Texas. And I can tell you that over 95% of the homelessness population that you see are those that come through the indigent healthcare program have an underlying diagnosis of some type of psychiatric issue. So having this coast unit up and running is one of the biggest accomplishments I think this city could ever have. And I can also assure you that it's not one that's going to go away, and it's not one that's not going to grow. It's going to have to grow. We probably already need 3 other units to meet up with the call demand that this unit is having. It's not, what's amazed me as I look at the calls, it's not just the number of recurring calls, because we have, we call them frequent flyers, the ones that you're going to deal with over and over again, but we continue to have new encounters. And one of the things that we're doing on the homelessness front to deal with this is before we jumped in and started throwing things at the wall to see what's stuck, we needed to figure out what is causing this. Galveston being an island, it's pretty easy to track. We're not seeing hordes of people walking across our causeway with backpacks coming to live in Galveston. Our homeless population is growing, and it's not necessarily growing with Galveston residents. It's growing with people that got here somehow. And I think before we can attack the problem, we need to understand how they got here. And did they become homeless once they came to Galveston? Were they homeless someplace else before they came to Galveston? Did they come here via our county jail? We get a lot of that. People get picked up in other communities. They get deposited in our jail. They get released. They would probably very much like to go back. They have no way. They get to walk out of the door of the jail and they don't get to go back. Very similar situation at UTMB. We have a lot of patients that, and police do a very good job of assessing the situation. If they feel that the person that they're handling has some type of health issue, they want to get them to a hospital. They end up at UTMB. UTMB does what they have to do, but then they get relieved. So Galveston being the home to UTMB, Galveston being the county seat, having the county jail, we get a lot of that. We also have a very large Salvation Army shelter here. It's very well run. It's very well done. And other communities have taken notice, and I suspect that they're bringing people here to stay there. And it's important to know the Salvation Army is nobody's permanent home. It is a place for people to reside until they can get back on their feet. And if they don't get back on their feet, they end up back on our streets. So we need to find a way to find out how they're getting here so we can better figure out what we're dealing with. But we just don't want to start throwing money at a problem without better understanding it. The mayor and I have met with some and used our local not-for-profits to do some survey work here, along with UTMB, the county jail, and our police department. We're going to have that data, and I think that's going to help us make really good decisions. And with the help of the foundations that have given some tours here lately to Tim Tegens and others here with the city, we're going to have some pretty good plans going forward. And before I forget, I don't know how many of you know this, but this is put on by the Round Table of Foundations. And the easiest way for me to describe the Round Table of Foundations is these are the super friends. These are the people we watched on cartoons on Saturday morning. These are the philanthropic groups in Galveston that care enough to support our community in many, many, many of its endeavors. And they have, they ask for very little, but they give so much. So if you could give a round of applause to the Round Table. Again, I touched on PD. We do have some challenges. We did conclude collective bargaining with our police department. Our police department now is one of the highest paid police departments in Galveston County. Actually, one of the higher paid in the region. Certainly one of the highest paid police departments of cities of 50,000 anywhere. I wish I could say that it's great and we're moving forward. The problem is we're still down how many police officers, Chief?
16.
We're down 16 officers. That's about 10%. Actually, I would be lying if I told you that's really probably a pretty good number for us to be down. But it's a challenge. And it also goes towards the fact that, and we're seeing this not just in PD, but across all of our workforces, it's not about the money that much anymore. It's about work-home balance, life balance, all these things that the younger workers are looking for. So it's hard as a city because we're in the service business and we're here to serve you. And I'm old. I expect everybody to be at the office every day. And I'm learning really quick from my daughter who works from home 3 days a week that I need to get with that program. So these are the things we're working on. Beverly West, who's our HR director, is here. She knows this. We've been working on this a lot. But I will tell you that if we're not filled in our positions, it's not because of pay. It's because of a lot of other reasons that we struggle with. And we're going to continue to work on that. Part of it is that by call volume, our police department's one of the busiest in Galveston County. It's a great learning environment for police officers. We get a lot of young, and we never are short on our exams. We get a ton of people that want to be Galveston police officers. But it's a tough place to work. So we try to get the best in here, but we always don't get to keep them. Just a quick mention, we are going to be initiating our comprehensive plan. We hope to have a bid in place and start that work in March. The reason the comprehensive plan is so important because it's what we deviate from. No, it is the actual roadmap for the city of Galveston and where we're going next. So we actually have somebody on council now, Mr. Finkley, who doesn't fall asleep when we talk about the comp plan because it can be that exciting sometimes. And he's looking forward to helping us with it, and we're really excited about it. We are an old city, and we continue to deal with a lot of the challenges. The mayor mentioned Pelican Island. We are in talks, and we do have a very good relationship with the Port of Houston. To say we're negotiating is probably a bit premature. To say that we asked them, what do you think about us maybe buying some smaller parcels of that property back from you on Pelican Island? And they didn't run out of the room like they were on fire. So we think we're off to a good start. We've gone out, we've done some appraisals of this property, so we know where we're starting with it, and we're going to start talking to them in earnest about this. Regardless of what happens with the city buying property, and the city's purchase of property over there at first is going to be for core infrastructure needs. We're going to need a sewer plant on Pelican Island before it's all said and done. We're going to need a fire station on Pelican Island before it's all said and done. We're probably going to need some other presence of public works over there. So we're going to need some property for this. So it's not all about, the thousands and thousands of acres over there. It's going to be very strategic at first, but it's a good start and it's where we're going with it. So it's very important that we do that. I'm going to sit down and shut up here in just about half a second, but I want to also mention that, I also want to mention that this is going to be the last State of the City for a couple of our council people, and I just personally want to thank them. Mr. Listowski, who he is much younger than me, he grew up with my sister. I still remember him reading at St. Patrick's Church on Sunday because Miss Macklin loved him and he could read really well. But now he's grown up and he's your council member, and there's probably more great things coming for him in the future. And also Mr. Collins, who has not only become one of the best people I've ever worked with, but also a good friend. So thank them for their service. We're ready to answer questions now.
All right. Thank you. For those not following along, the Astros did win 9-1. All right, gentlemen. Can the city help identify ways to get money for the police to increase service to short-term rental neighborhood hotspots?
Well, I'll start out talking about that. Yes, we are looking at that to have enforcement not only of the current laws, but we're going to be looking eventually, once we get our data through the park board and their software program, of looking at, do we need to expand any rules or regulations here on the island here? And one of the things that's going to be involved with that is working with our city marshal program to work with having marshals that are available possibly even beyond 5 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the evening, but at night to help enforce some of these regulations. So we'll be talking about that at council coming up here. The key, though, is we need to get our data. We're running on anecdotal information right now, and people say these short-term rentals are causing so many problems in the community. I have a feeling, this is personal feeling, it's probably a handful of them that are doing this. I suspect the majority are pretty good neighbors, but we'll see. And we're collecting that data right now.
Yeah, I echo what the mayor says. Gathering, it's kind of like the homeless thing. We have to figure out where the issues are, what they are, so we can better attack them and strategically go after those issues. The marshal's office will be critical in that. It's also important too, I think that short-term rentals are going to ebb and flow in Galveston. I think we hit a peak during COVID where everybody wanted to be in the short-term rental business. And I think we're probably heading to an area where we're going to have less people in the short-term rental business. And then we can talk at one of these things about how long-term rental issues cause problems, because I've lived in Galveston long enough to know that I've had some long-term renters that have been way worse than the short-term rental neighbor that I have now. So it's going to always be an issue. I think at the core part of this is, and this council has exhibited the ability to do this, is having the courage to stand behind our codes and ordinances and enforce them fairly and evenly across anybody. And if there's something that creeps up that's new to the community that we haven't seen before, and there's something new every day, there's some new electric something running down the street somewhere every day that we don't recognize in our ordinances, that we stay on top of that and that we evenly enforce on it and stay with the program so our residents have a good, safe place to live.
All right. What research-based resources can you share that has been backed the decision to go forth on the Ike Dike? In particular, wondering about projected impacts to marine biology, fishing, and shrimping industries.
Yeah. The city has been involved in the Ike Dike planning from the perspective of protecting the island. The Corps of Engineers has taken it to that next level. They're working with the Texas General Land Office and our state legislature. Environmental impacts will be key to all of this. I can assure you that there won't be a grain of sand turned for the Ike Dike until all of that has been explored, to the point that it will probably frustrate many of you that we don't have it yet. I would honestly tell you that we're probably going to have another hurricane that impacts us before we actually have this Ike Dike in place. But I don't think that anybody can blame the Corps or anybody else for not taking their time and doing this right, because as we've learned from our seawall that's over 100 years old, these things stand the test of time. We need to do them right, and we also need to make sure that we don't cause more problems for my kids and their kids down the line by doing it wrong.
You know, also just a thought on that, I can't remember exactly how much the Corps was saying this Ike Dike system would cost. I read an article coming up here, I think it was in, can't remember, they're saying it may be up to $57 billion. This thing is, the longer it goes, the more expensive it's going to be. Personally, I think they're going to do it in phases. I think if they do move ahead with this, we'll see the gates out there, the opening of the ship channel first. Personally, I think they'll move then to the seawall and the dune system second, and the ring levee will probably be the last thing they would look at.
Yeah. Public safety is an unusually high percentage of the total city costs. Do you expect this to continue or diminish?
Oh, it's going to continue, and that's not unusual. It's probably a little bit out of the ordinary norms for Galveston that we're skewed that high, because if you compare us to other cities of 50,000 people, because we're not a city of 50,000 people. We're 75,000 people at 8:30 in the morning when everybody's going to work, and we're 200,000 people on a Saturday in the summer. So when you make those comparatives, of course, our police is always going to be, those public safety costs are always going to be higher. The fact that we're approaching 5,000 short-term rentals, and the question came up of how we're going to enforce those, is a public safety issue that we're going to have to deal with. So we're going to continue to work on that, but public safety is going to continue to be an issue. We need to do better about using tourist dollars to help fund that, because a lot of the cost, and you can say, well, not everybody that stays in a hotel is going to cause you criminal activity, but you don't catch fish without bait. And when you've got 25, 30,000 people here roaming around on a Saturday that aren't familiar with the area, they become prey. And that's what brings crime from off the island onto the island. So we're going to continue to struggle with that for a while. Just the general cost of public safety is rising much faster than the cost of any other part of city government. We're not the only city that's down 10% of our officers. A lot of cities are down 15, 20%. So the cost of public safety is going to continue to go up. I can tell you pre-COVID, the cost of a police cruiser cost me about $57,000. We are quickly approaching $100,000 for a fully outfitted police cruiser right now. I can tell you that the cost of a fire pumper has doubled, and we are in the process right now of purchasing a new tower apparatus. It's going to be over $2 million for a fire truck. That was less than $1 million the last one we bought, and we just bought a kind of a what we call a quint, and it's going to be used as a pumper and a ladder for the West End. And for the very first time, Galveston's going to have 3 full-time ladder apparatus operating on the island. That was $1.2 million, Chief, $1.3 million. So the cost is not going to go down, and this is going to continue to get more and more expensive.
Visit with the mayors of the other cities in Galveston County quite a bit. And this is a discussion we have about the cost of public safety personnel to your operational budget or general fund. Here at the city, it's in our budget book. It's online there at the city website. Our cost of public safety personnel to the general fund budget is 61%. And so that's pretty manageable. It is something, as Brian mentioned, probably continue to go up. I'm hearing rumors that it's up in the 80s in Austin right now, but I'm not sure about that. 80% range, somewhere around there. I would say, though, too, also, for a town of 50,000 people, we're one of the few cities of that size that have our own fire department. When I talk to these other mayors, they're talking about a volunteer fire department.
Yeah. And also, again, we have about 169, 170 sworn police officers. Texas City is actually a little bit bigger than us in population, depending on how you count it, and they've got about 80. So, we already have twice as many police officers as most cities our size.
All right. Please discuss the I-45 expansion from Causeway to 61st Street and its impact. It's a few years off, but
If you need something in Houston, go now. I think we heard today from TxDOT they're going to be letting the Galveston portion of that project in the spring of 2026. It keeps getting moved back. They are struggling with some right-of-way procurement here on the island. We are trying very hard not to have the feeder road run through the showroom of Classic. I think it's going to continue to track in that 2026 range. It's inevitable, and there is not one road project, whether we're just putting asphalt on a street or we're rebuilding a highway, that's not going to be an inconvenience to somebody. But it's the part of growth that we have to do. At some point in the future, maybe we'll have a faster way of doing these roads. I will tell you that I am in this, just because I've done this my whole life, I'm pretty impressed with how fast it's going. It seems like forever, but I can still remember when they did the Gulf Freeway the last time, and it seems like it took a lot longer then. So, but it is coming to a city near you early in 2026.
what can we as citizens, consumers, and city leaders do collectively to limit single-use plastic packaging at our local retailers?
Well, that's a number of years ago when I was on city council, and I say a number of years ago, maybe it was 5, 6, 7 years ago, I championed a ordinance change that would limit the use of single-use plastic bags here in the island. We worked with some of the nonprofits here. We started to get organizations buying in. At the time, the Mitchell owned hotels here immediately came on board with that. And we also started discussions with Kroger and some of the others to let them know that this ordinance was moving forward here in Galveston. As that started to occur, we got a letter, I think, from the Attorney General of the state of Texas and said if we did that, they will sue us.
It came in a plastic envelope.
If you may have not noticed, by the way, I'm the straight man for Brian. So what happened is then Laredo, Texas, they got a letter from they were trying to move forward with banning single-use plastic bags in Laredo. Laredo went the other way. We decided to stand down and let Laredo carry that forward. Laredo fought the city of Texas. It went to the Texas Supreme Court, and Laredo lost. So that's kind of where we are. Personally, I think that's something that would be ideal. That's a perfect fit for an island that is so maritime and not maritime, but marine biology oriented here. Maybe this will come back up here shortly.
What can be done to make bicycle lanes more user-friendly and safer? They are often in lighting-poor areas, full of potholes, dangerous, rough areas, and are generally not numerous enough.
Yeah, we are somewhat geographically challenged. We've done a better job of getting these bike lanes on our north-south streets. A little bit of trivia, our north-south streets are much wider than our east-west streets. And as an old city, with narrow lots, it's very hard. If we didn't have all the cars parked on the street, it'd be much easier to do it. We continue to try. We have master transportation plans where we try to incorporate bike lanes where we have the right of way width to do it. God love William Schuster. When he was on council, he wanted so bad to have a good east-west bike lane. But it's hard. We don't have the real estate to do that. And we don't want to try to cram a bike lane in where it's going to be unsafe for a biker interfering with traffic. But it is definitely something that's on our priority list. We've been trying to enact it on our north-south streets. And of course, we do have the world's longest sidewalk up on the seawall to get you east and west. So, we're trying to work with it, but I don't disagree that we need more bike lanes. I'm somebody that rides my bike probably 3 or 4 times a week around town. I cheat. I have an electric bike, but my wife doesn't, and she's probably much healthier for it. But it's definitely something that we need to work on, but we are going to be a little bit real estate challenged. We've kind of reached out, or at least I have talked to some leadership in New Orleans. It suffers from some of the same old streets that we have, and they too suffer with that, trying to do it. But they are creating some corridors for it and things, and we'll try to do the same as we redo our streets.
If you like bike lanes, just for interest's sake, the new Pelican Island Bridge is designed to have bike lanes on it. Now, there's no way to get there on a bike. And once you get over the bridge, there's no place to drive your bike. But we will have bike lanes on the new Pelican Island.
Are there ways to incentivize vacation rentals and residents to plant and maintain green spaces? Are there ways to incentivize vacation rentals and residents to plant and maintain green spaces?
That's,
Sounds like a policy issue to me.
yeah. It's something that we could look at in our land development regulations in some way. As you know, when you enact things and change our codes, everything else that's going on before then is grandfathered in. So it wouldn't pick up all of the short-term rentals that are out there right now. Green space is so important. We have expanded our use of green space in surface lots, and the council and planning commission in our planning department has brought forward changes in the ordinance to have more landscaping in surface lots here. That's something, though, at short-term rentals, it would probably be something that would be hard to pursue, but, it's something we could look at.
And we also need to make sure we balance that out too. It sounds really good to plant a bunch of trees, especially a bunch of thirsty trees and thirsty lawns. But as we move down the line, the most precious commodity we deal with here on the island is going to be water. So while all that sounds really good, we also need to balance that out with the resources that it takes to maintain these things. So we really have to be careful. And we also have to make sure that what we do doesn't cause or exacerbate any kind of drainage issues. So while a lot of these landscape and green spaces can really help with that, we also want to make sure that if we're using drought tolerant plants and things like that, that it also aids in the drainage.
So you touched on this a little bit, but what does the city plan to contribute to the Jones Park renovation?
What we're working with currently, this is a kind of a joint project at this particular point in time with Vision Galveston. They have been helping with some of the design work and so forth. Jones Park is a tough one out there. I don't know if you're familiar with Jones Park. I don't know if you remember a number of years ago, I think it was about 2014, 2015, we had it on the ballot to sell Jones Park. I don't know if you remember that. And that was turned down. Vast majority of the voters did not want to sell Jones Park. We were considering selling it at the city at the time. That park is basically a marsh over there. It just holds water. We've had a number of working with Vision Galveston. They have had some design work and some proposals come forward on how we can manage the water flow there at that park and still have a usable space at the park. So that's something that we'll probably be looking at IDC coming up in the future to see about if that could be funded.
Yeah. And Barbara Sanderson, who's sitting over here as our Parks Executive Director over Parks and Community Services, she and I visited with Christine about this the other day with Vision Galveston. We're solidly behind it. I will tell you, the big challenge with Jones Park is it abuts many, many homes. It abuts homes that are at about the same level as the park. If we start filling in the park, we're going to start flooding these homes. So we need to make sure that we don't do that. So we're trying to develop Jones Park in concert with Vision Galveston to where it actually may help some of the drainage in that area, bioswales, things like that. It may be one of the only parks that we, one of the first parks that we do that with here in Galveston. But one of the things that Ms. Sanderson's working on now that our IDC was approved to continue to go for, we used to say, okay, it's only good for 20 years. Well, the problem with that is you couldn't do the really big projects because you have to issue some debt for that based on the revenue from the IDC. And we were always so limited, we couldn't do it. So I've asked Ms. Sanderson to start putting together that wish list, which includes things for Little League and Lassie League and Jones Park and others for that very reason for our next, we've about gone through the entire park package that we had approved before, and we're getting ready to crank that back up again. And Jones and Shield Park both are certainly part of that plan.
How are we doing on time? 5 minutes? Okay. Here we go. There are too many vaping stores by schools. Parker 1 block away, Odyssey 2 stores. What can we do to limit vaping stores?
Vaping stores. That's that gets to be a tough one. Texas is known for its strong property rights, and all this sounds really good until it's a right that you enjoy at your home or your property and somebody wants to take it away from you. I still think the best way to do this is through education and to make sure that our kids know that that's not good. There was no vaping when I grew up, but I remember my grandpa telling me as he smoked a cigarette, don't ever smoke cigarettes. My other grandfather worked at the brewery. He never told me not to drink beer. But I think that's the thing we need to work on.
How are we working with GISD leadership to address the state of our schools?
I've got this. It started under Superintendent Gibson, and we've got a great relationship with Matt Neighbors. I think that as we struggle in the state of Texas with trying to educate our kids and also try to not run everybody out of their homes with taxes and everything else, it's imperative that local government entities work together. And I will tell you that on a very frequent basis, Miles Shelton, this is his wonderful facility we're in tonight at Galveston College, and Mr. Neighbors, we meet regularly. We have got to start working together and partnering so that the dollars for education go to our kids. And I mow grass every day at the city of Galveston. The schools have to mow grass. The college has to mow grass. They have a crew. I have a crew. I have a police department. They have police departments. We could go on and on and on. And until we start working together and doing that, that's when there's going to be true savings, and those savings can go to educating our kids.
I think one of the things we can do with GISD to help them, though, the building of this new stadium, and now they're building a new high school there. Superintendent Neighbors came to me the other day and said, Mayor, I want to thank you what the city has done to expedite and help us with permitting and some of the other issues they ran into in the building of that stadium. And we're going to be looking to have a partnership with them as they move forward with this high school. This high school is, they got their hands full with this over there. It's going to probably take longer than they planned. I was told probably a year longer than they planned on getting this high school built. But the city is there poised to assist them in any way we can.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank the mayor and city manager for their time tonight. The city, port, and park board representatives will stay at their tables to answer individual questions until 8 p.m. And I appreciate all of your attention tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Hit your mute button.
There's one particular.
Okay. You want to take that from me? How you doing, Tom?
I hope so.
Right? Yeah.